Sikong overnight at Yungyang staging post. Farewell to Shen. Friends from way back, parted in this vast terrain. How long have hills and rivers stood between us? To meet like this so suddenly, it's like a dream. Sadly, we ask each other whether years have gone. My lone lamp's glow reveals cold rain. Swirling mist darkens deep bamboo. More sorrow lies in wait tomorrow, when we'll share that final farewell cup. So, we continue with poems from Dali era poets. This is the first poem of Sikong. He has a few in this anthology. I'm not sure how many right now, perhaps 3, perhaps more. And he is one of the 10 important poets of the Dali era. So therefore, a poet that mainly wrote in the later years of the 8th century, and who is pretty representative of the style of technical finesse, but relative moral or ethical vacuity and content that characterizes this group. He led a life of minor success, passing the examinations and occupying minor posts. He became a friend of Qianqi and Lulun while he was serving in the capital, which is part of the basis of the legend of the story of the ten worthies of the Dali period. And he served in some minor provincial offices. His greatest post before dying was that of acting director of the bureaus of waterways in the Ministry of Works, which is a middle post, not too high. Okay, going back to this specific poem. So this is very similar to the last 4, 5, 6 poems we've been reading. It's a poem about meeting and parting, a chance encounter. It reminds me a lot from that point of view. The one we've just read by Li Yi, but also the one by Dai Shulun that we read 2 days ago, Old Friends Meeting by Chance at an Inn. It's the same idea. 2 scholar officials meet in this case not an inn, a staging post where people in the service of the government would stop to refresh and change horses and continue on their way to their provinces and destinations in their official business. So at this Zhongjiang staging post, which would have been in the north, I think, not too far from the capital, Sikong encounters a friend, Shen. It was a completely unexpected and not at all a pre-planned meeting, happened by chance. And they probably had not met a long time since a moment in the unspecified past before the meeting that is commented in this poem. But it's a brief meeting, it cannot last. Both Sikong, we may presume, and Shen have to go on with their duties and their missions. So typical poem about meeting, the lamentations at the brevity of meeting, at the chance encounter of meeting, at the fugacity of time, at how friends cry at not being able to enjoy each other's company. So as I said, pretty staple fare, pretty much a continuation of the same type of poetry and topics as the poems we've read of late. Perhaps the images will change a little bit, but not probably the tone and the general message. Let's go as usual, couplet by couplet. First couplet. Friends from way back, parted in this vast terrain. How long have hills and rivers stood between us? So the first couplet, and you could say probably the first part of the poem, dwells on the generalities of separation. And this first couplet basically establishes how friends are separated geographically, physically. This is the spatial coordinate of separation. So the poet is reflecting on how he and his friends, the people with whom, the other scholar officials whose company he enjoyed in the capital or wherever he lives, are now far away. They are parted by the vast terrain. How long have hills and rivers stood between us? So hills and rivers are generally used as a symbol in Chinese poetry of the barriers of physical separation. Rivers have to be crossed by bridges or boats. Hills have to be crossed on foot or on vehicles. But they represent very well symbolic barriers that separate people, and they're spatial barriers. So the first couplet is about, China is a huge empire. Scholar officials are serving in the different provinces. It's a lamentation at the bigness of space that separates friends and people together. Although there is already an inkling at the presence of another separating coordinate in the axis of time, because there's how long have hills and rivers stood between us. So they haven't always been there. So the spatial coordinate is always one that separates scholar officials in the now, but perhaps in the past it did not separate because the scholar officials were in the same place. Second couplet. To meet like this so suddenly, it's like a dream. Sadly, we ask each other where the years have gone. So now the meeting has happened, and it has happened by chance, and a completely unexpected meeting. And this common image of a meeting being so unlikely that it feels dreamlike has appeared in many of the poems we've read previously. In Dai Shurun's, remember the line, this surely happens only in dreams. And I think among the other poets you also had some other lines about this dreamlike nature of a meeting, because it is so unlikely. Yeah? Here the chronological element is thrust into the poem. Not only the spatial separation, but the temporal separation. Yeah? We ask each other where the years have gone. So the poet, in this case Sikong and his friend Shen, haven't just been separated by space, which is something that right now, at the time the poem is being composed, is temporarily obliterated. They have been separated by time, and that separation by time cannot be obliterated. Of course, at the moment of their meeting, they are united in the same time and space. But it's going to be a brief meeting, and it doesn't erase the fact that a lot of time has passed, and now Sikong and Han Sheng are much older. So the first two couplets basically gave us this background of change in time, change in space, as a background for this unexpected, unusual, 1 in a million meeting by chance between friends at the Junjiang staging post. The next two couplets move us away from the reflections about the past and these distances, and thrust us directly into the present, in how Sikong Shu is feeling now, and on how things will go in the immediate present future. Third couplet. My lone lamp's glow reveals cold rain. Swirling mist darkens deep bamboo. So third couplet is purely descriptive. It's nature descriptive. You could say that there has been a change in the poem from the poetic persona speaking about a topic to just describing the sights in this night at the staging post. But of course, nature is never neutral in Chinese poetry. It's always overburdened with connotations. It's supposed to rhyme sympathetically with human feeling. So we are supposed to interpret the sights of the night as correlating to the feelings of Sikong Shu, especially to his sadness at the chance character of this meeting and of his awareness of its fugacity. So, my lone lamp's glow reveals cold rain. We might imagine that Sikong Shu does have a lamp and that it's illuminating the night outside enough for rainfall to be perceived under this small lamp. But check the adjectives: lone lamp, cold rain. We might imagine that Sikong Shu indeed feels both lonely and cold. And it's not only a physical coldness and loneliness. In fact, we know he is not alone at this night. He is in the company of Han Shen. It's more of a spiritual loneliness and coldness. He knows this is a chance encounter, this is a brief encounter, and he will be again left alone and cold, far from friends in a remote area, doing his duty. And the second line is a bit more difficult to interpret, but swirling mist darkens deep bamboo. So again, we might imagine that this is a phenomenon that is being seen at night by Sikong. It's raining, so some mist might accumulate, and it might swirl in little clouds and clump against a bamboo that is dark because of the night, and the mist seems to make it darker. But again, we could focus on the adjectives as pointing us towards what Sikong is feeling himself. So probably, especially the darkening deep bamboo, seems to point at Sikong sadness becoming deeper, his heart becoming darker, at the sad, melancholy thoughts that are accumulating in his mind about separation in time and space from friends. And that's hardly relieved by this brief chance encounter. The last couplet puts us on the road, as it were. It looks on into the future. More sorrow lies in wait tomorrow, when we'll share that final farewell cup. The tone is already lugubrious and sad tonight, but it will be worse tomorrow, because tomorrow, definitely, Sikong and Shen will part and follow their respective ways. They'll share a final cup of wine, and they'll say goodbye. Okay, so that's all for today. This is the first of 3 poems by Sikong. In fact, I'm just checking that the next 2 are also by him. At least the first one is probably going to have a very similar topic to this one. The next one seems to be, also Farewell to a Friend. The next 2 poems by Sikong are also going to be takes on the theme of parting from friends. So again, quite a conventional poem, but I think it's relatively well composed. The images are relatively well embroidered and sewn together to create an effective whole.